It was a bright, sunny afternoon in Maple Grove. That's the name of my neighborhood. It's a quiet little place where nothing super exciting ever happens, at least, that's what everyone thought. My name is Jake Carter, and I'm just a regular guy. I live in a small house with a little backyard. In that backyard, I keep a tiny group of chickens. They're my chickens, and I love them. They walk around, clucking and pecking at the ground. They lay fresh eggs for me every day, and they don't bother anyone. To me, they're perfect. They just mind their own business, doing their chicken stuff. But not everyone liked my chickens. Oh no, there was one person who hated them with all her heart. Her name was Linda Grayson. Around here, people called her the HOA Queen. HOA stands for Homeowners Association. It's like a group that makes rules for the neighborhood. Linda acted like she was the boss of everything. She thought she owned every tree, every flower, and every single blade of grass on our street. To her, my chickens weren't just birds, they were a big, giant problem. She said they were a crime against humanity. Can you believe that? She'd stand by the fence between our yards and yell at me. "Those chickens are so noisy," she'd shout. "They're messy and awful." Her face would turn super red, like a big, ripe tomato. She'd wave her arms around like she was trying to scare them away just by being loud. Now, most people in Maple Grove didn't care about my chickens. They'd walk by, see them clucking, and just smile or wave at me. Some even said, "Hey, Jake, those eggs must be nice." And they were right, those eggs were yummy. But Linda? She wasn't like the others. She made it her mission to complain about my chickens every single day. If the sun was up, you could bet Linda was mad about something. Usually, it was my little flock of hens. Everyone thought she was just a loudmouth, a person who talks too much and gets upset over nothing. They figured she had too much free time on her hands. Maybe she didn't have enough to do, so she picked on me and my chickens to keep herself busy. That's what I thought too, at first. I'd see her yelling, and I'd just shrug. "Okay, Linda," I'd say to myself. "Go ahead and yell. It's not hurting anyone." But here's the thing, here's the big secret nobody saw coming. Linda wasn't just a grumpy lady who didn't like chickens. Oh no, she was hiding something. Something way, way bigger than her anger at my little birds. Nobody in Maple Grove had a clue, not me, not the neighbors, not anyone. Everyone saw her as the HOA Queen, the lady who loved rules and hated anything fun. But there was more to her story. A lot more. And it was going to turn everything upside down. My chickens. They were just the start of this wild adventure. Linda thought she could boss me around, but she didn't know what was coming her way. Not yet. So, let me ask you something right now. Imagine you're me, living in a little house with some chickens in the backyard. They're not loud, they're not mean, they just cluck and lay eggs. But your neighbor, someone like Linda, hates them. She yells at you every day, telling you to get rid of them. What would you do? Would you keep your chickens, even if she got mad? Or would you give them up just to make her stop? Tell me what you think down below. I really want to know. Because for me, this was just the beginning of something crazy. Let's go back to that sunny afternoon. I was outside, standing in my yard, watching my chickens. There were 5 of them, 5 little hens with soft feathers and funny little walks. I'd named them all. There was Clucky, the leader of the group. She was the bossiest one, always telling the others where to go. Then there was Sunny, who loved sitting in the sunshine. Pepper was the smallest, but she had a big personality. Daisy liked to dig in the dirt, and Muffin was the quiet one who laid the best eggs. They were my buddies. I'd built them a little coop, a tiny house where they slept at night. It had a red roof and a little ramp they'd waddle up. I'd sit out there sometimes, just watching them peck at the ground or chase a bug. It made me happy. That day, the sun was high in the sky, and the air smelled like fresh grass. I was tossing some corn to the chickens, smiling as they ran over to grab it. Clucky got there first, like always. Everything felt calm and normal. But then I heard it, the sound of Linda's voice. It cut through the air like a siren. "Jake Carter," she shouted. I looked up, and there she was, standing by the fence. Her hands were on her hips, and her face was already turning that tomato red color. "Those chickens have got to go," she yelled. "They're driving me crazy." I sighed. This wasn't new. She'd been saying the same thing for weeks. "Linda," I said, trying to stay nice, "they're just chickens. They're not hurting anyone." But she didn't listen. She never did. "They cluck all day," she snapped. "And the smell. It's awful." I scratched my head. Smell? My chickens didn't smell bad. I cleaned their coop every week. And the clucking? It was quiet, like a little song. But Linda acted like they were screaming monsters. She pointed her finger at me. "You're breaking the rules, Jake. The HOA doesn't allow this." I knew that wasn't true. I'd read the rules when I moved in. Chickens were fine as long as they stayed in my yard. But Linda didn't care about the truth. She just wanted to win. I stood there, watching her yell. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were narrow, like she was trying to shoot lasers at me. She wore a bright yellow shirt that made her look even angrier somehow. The neighbors could hear her too. I saw curtains twitch in the houses nearby. People were probably thinking, "Oh, there goes Linda again." She was famous around here for complaining. Last month, she'd gotten mad at Mr. Thompson for painting his mailbox blue. Before that, she'd yelled at little Timmy for riding his bike too fast. Linda was always mad about something. But with me and my chickens, it was personal. She hated them more than anything else. I tried to stay calm. "Linda," I said again, "they're not breaking any rules. They're happy here." She huffed, crossing her arms. "We'll see about that," she said, like she had a big plan. Then she turned and stomped back to her house. I watched her go, her yellow shirt disappearing behind her front door. I shook my head and looked at my chickens. "Don't worry, girls," I told them. "She's just loud. She can't do anything." Clucky clucked back at me, like she agreed. I laughed. But deep down, I was starting to wonder. Linda wasn't giving up. She kept coming back, day after day, with the same complaints. It was like a game to her: yell at Jake, scare the chickens, repeat. I didn't know why she cared so much. They were just birds. They didn't fly over her fence or peck her flowers. They stayed in my yard, living their little chicken lives. But to Linda, they were the worst thing in the world. I started to think maybe there was more to it. Maybe she wasn't just a grumpy neighbor. Maybe something else was going on. That's when I noticed something strange. It wasn't about the chickens, not really. It was about Linda. She was always watching me, always finding a reason to come over and complain. But sometimes, I'd catch her looking nervous. Like she was hiding something. One night, I'd seen a car pull up to her house. It was late, way past bedtime for most people. The car's lights were off, and a man got out. He handed Linda a big bag, then left fast. I didn't think much of it then, just weird neighbor stuff. But now, with her yelling about my chickens every day, I started to wonder. What was she up to? Back to that sunny afternoon. After Linda stormed off, I sat down on my porch. The chickens were still pecking at their corn, happy as could be. I leaned back and watched them. They didn't know about Linda's big tantrum. They didn't care. They were just doing their thing, clucking and scratching the dirt. I smiled. "You girls are the best," I said out loud. But in my head, I was thinking about Linda. She thought she could boss me around, scare me into getting rid of my chickens. She thought she was the queen of Maple Grove, and I was just some guy she could push. But she didn't know me. And she didn't know what I'd figure out soon. See, Linda thought this was all about my chickens. She thought she could yell and complain and make me give up. But she was wrong. This wasn't just about a few hens in my backyard. This was about something bigger, something she didn't want anyone to see. Everyone in the neighborhood saw her as the HOA queen, the lady who loved rules and hated fun. They thought she was just loud and annoying. I thought that too, at first. But there was a secret hiding behind her angry words. A secret that was going to come out, whether she liked it or not. My chickens. They were just the start. Linda's yelling was like a big sign pointing to something she didn't want me to find. She thought she was in charge, but she didn't see what was coming. That sunny afternoon, as I sat there with my hens, I had no idea how wild things were about to get. Linda was hiding something huge, bigger than a grudge against my little flock. And soon, everyone in Maple Grove would know the truth. So, what about you? Picture this, you've got some chickens in your yard. They're cute, they're quiet, they give you eggs. But your neighbor hates them. She yells at you every day, saying they're terrible. Would you keep them anyway? Would you stand up to her, or would you let her win? Drop your answer below, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to hear what you'd do. Because for me, this was just the beginning. Linda thought she could scare me, but she had no clue what was about to happen. Stick around, this story's going to get crazy. Linda wasn't just annoying, she was like a storm that never stopped. Every single day, she'd come over to my house. She'd march across her yard, her feet stomping the grass, and stop right at the fence. Then she'd point her skinny, bony finger at my chicken coop. That's the little house where my chickens lived. Those birds are against the rules, she'd shout, her voice loud and sharp. I'm calling the HOA board, Jake. You'll see. The HOA board was the group that made rules for our neighborhood. She said that a lot, threatening to call them, like they'd swoop in and take my chickens away. But here's the thing, I knew she was wrong. I'd read the rules when I moved into Maple Grove. I'm not dumb, I checked everything. The rules said chickens were okay as long as they stayed in my yard and didn't bother anyone. Mine didn't bother anybody. They just clucked a little and laid eggs. So when Linda yelled, I'd just smile at her. Sometimes I'd wave, too, nice and friendly. Go ahead, Linda, I'd think to myself. Call whoever you want. I wasn't scared because I knew the truth. My chickens weren't breaking any rules. Linda didn't care about the truth, though. Facts didn't matter to her. She'd stand there by the fence, her arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the worst person in the world. Her eyes were narrow and mean, like she was trying to burn a hole right through me. Sometimes she'd say stuff under her breath, quiet but loud enough for me to hear. People like you don't belong here, she'd mutter. Or, this is a nice neighborhood, and you're ruining it. That hurt a little, I won't lie. I mean, I'm just a regular guy. I keep my house clean, I mow my lawn, and my chickens are quiet. Why didn't I belong? What was so bad about me? Her words stung, sure, like little bee stings in my chest. But I didn't let her see that. I kept my cool. I'd nod or shrug and go back to whatever I was doing, feeding my chickens or watering my plants. I wasn't going to let her ruin my day. She could yell all she wanted, but I wasn't giving up my chickens. They were my buddies, and I liked having them around. Clucky, Sunny, Pepper, Daisy, and Muffin, they were part of my home. Linda wasn't going to change that, no matter how loud she got. But while she was busy yelling at me, I started noticing stuff. Weird stuff. At first, it was little things that didn't seem like a big deal. Like, sometimes I'd see her looking over the fence even when she wasn't shouting. She'd just stare at my yard, her face all tight and nervous. Why was she watching me so much? Then I saw something bigger. Late at night, when most people were asleep, strange cars would pull up to her house. Not every night, but enough that I started paying attention. The cars were sneaky. They'd roll up slow, with their headlights turned off so nobody would notice. I'd be in my house, maybe getting a glass of water, and I'd peek out the window. There they were, dark shapes in the street, parking right by Linda's driveway. A person would get out, usually a man, and walk up to her door. Linda would open it fast, like she'd been waiting. They'd talk in quiet, hushed voices, whispers I couldn't hear from my house. Then the man would hand her something. It looked like a bag, a big one, like the kind you'd use for groceries or gym stuff. But it seemed heavy, the way she held it. She'd take it inside quick, and the man would leave. The car would drive off, silent as a shadow. That wasn't all. Sometimes I'd see Linda sneak out to her garage late at night. She'd carry those bags, the same ones the mystery people gave her. She'd look around, left and right, like she was scared someone might see her. Then she'd duck into the garage and shut the door fast. What was she doing? Why was she acting so sneaky? My chickens didn't care, they were asleep in their coop. But I started wondering. Something was off. Something didn't feel right. At first, I thought maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was just getting stuff delivered late, like packages or groceries. But who gets groceries in the middle of the night? And why was she so nervous about it? The more I saw, The more I thought about it, Linda wasn't just mad about my chickens. She was hiding something. Those cars, those bags, those sneaky trips to the garage, it was all connected. I didn't know what it was yet, but I could feel it. Like a puzzle with missing pieces, waiting for me to figure it out. Linda kept coming over every day, pointing and yelling about my chickens. "They're too loud," she'd say, even though they barely made noise. "They're ugly," she'd snap, even though my hens were cute. She'd glare at me like I was dirt on her shoe. But I stayed calm. I didn't yell back. I didn't fight. I just watched her, and I watched what she did when she thought nobody was looking. She thought she was the boss, the HOA queen who could scare me into doing what she wanted. She thought I'd give up and get rid of my chickens just to make her happy. But she didn't know I was starting to see things. I wasn't the only one who'd figure it out soon, either. Whatever Linda was up to, it wasn't going to stay a secret forever. She could yell at me all day, but she couldn't stop what was coming. My chickens weren't the problem, she was. And every time she marched over to complain, she was giving me more chances to notice her little secrets. She thought she had all the power, but she didn't see the bigger picture. Something strange was happening at her house, and I was starting to put the clues together. So there I was, keeping my cool while Linda kept shouting. She didn't know it, but she was digging herself into a hole. A big one. My chickens clucked away, happy in their coop, while Linda's world was about to turn upside down. She thought she could push me around, but soon she'd find out she wasn't as smart as she thought. Something was off, and I was getting closer to the truth every day. Stick around, you won't believe what happens next. Weeks went by, and Linda didn't stop. She just got worse. She wasn't just yelling anymore, she was acting like she had a big plan to get rid of me and my chickens for good. One day, she came over to my house, and she was madder than ever. Her face was red, her eyes were wild, and she was holding a clipboard tight in her hands. She stormed right up to my fence, her shoes crunching the grass, and she waved that clipboard in my face like it was a magic wand. "I've got signatures, Jake," she said, her voice loud and mean. "People signed this to kick you out. You're done." She smirked at me, like she'd already won. I looked at her, then at the clipboard. It had some papers clipped to it, with messy handwriting all over them. She kept waving it around, saying, "The neighbors agree with me. They hate your chickens too." I didn't believe her, though. Linda liked to make stuff up. I bet half those names weren't even real. Maybe she wrote them herself just to scare me. So I didn't say anything. I just shrugged my shoulders, like it didn't matter. "Okay, Linda," I said in my head. "You do you." Then I turned around and went back to feeding my chickens. I tossed some corn on the ground, and Clucky ran over to grab it first, like always. Linda stood there, huffing and puffing, but I didn't look back. She didn't like that. She wanted me to fight or get mad, but I wouldn't give her what she wanted. She finally stomped off, muttering stuff I couldn't hear. I watched my chickens peck at their food, and I smiled. They didn't care about Linda's clipboard or her big talk. They were happy just being chickens. But Linda? She was getting bolder every day. She wasn't giving up. She kept coming over, yelling about rules, saying she'd win in the end. She thought she was so smart, like she had me trapped. "You can't keep those birds forever, Jake," she'd shout. "I'll make sure of it." I'd just nod or wave, keeping my cool. But inside, I was starting to wonder how far she'd go. Then something happened that night, something big. After Linda left with her clipboard, the sun went down, and it got dark. I was inside my house, sitting by the window with a cup of water. The neighborhood was quiet, and my chickens were asleep in their coop. That's when I saw it again, a car. Another strange car, just like the ones I'd seen before. It crept up the street, slow and sneaky, with its headlights turned off. My heart beat a little faster. I'd seen this happen a few times now, always late at night when nobody else was awake. The car stopped right by Linda's driveway, just like before. I grabbed my phone fast. I wanted to see more this time. I opened the camera and zoomed in as far as it could go. The car door opened, and a guy stepped out. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket, and he moved quick. He walked up to Linda's door, and she opened it right away, like she knew he was coming. They didn't talk loud, I couldn't hear anything from my house. But I saw him hand her something. It was a big duffel bag, heavy looking, the kind you might use for sports stuff or camping. Linda took it, holding it with both hands like it weighed a lot. Then the guy turned around and darted back to his car. He drove off fast, still with no lights on, disappearing into the dark. Linda shut her door quick, and that was it. I put my phone down and sat there, thinking. My gut, the feeling in my stomach told me something was wrong. This wasn't normal. People don't get big bags dropped off in the middle of the night unless they're up to something. And Linda? She acted so perfect, like she was the queen of the neighborhood, always bossing everyone around. But now I was sure this wasn't just about my chickens. This wasn't just HOA drama, like some silly fight over rules. She was doing something secret, something she didn't want anyone to know about. I started thinking back. All those times she yelled at me, all those days she came over with her mean words, it was like she was trying to keep me busy. Maybe she didn't want me looking at her too much. Maybe she thought if she kept me mad about the chickens, I wouldn't notice the weird stuff at her house. But I did notice. I saw the cars. I saw the bags. I saw her sneaking around. And now, with that duffel bag on my phone screen, I knew for sure Linda was hiding something big. She thought she had me cornered. She thought her clipboard and her loud voice would scare me into giving up my chickens. "You're done, Jake," she'd said, smirking like she'd already beaten me. But she didn't see what was coming. She didn't know I was watching her back. Every time she yelled at me, I got a little more curious. Every time she pointed at my coop, I wondered what she was really up to. And every cluck from my chickens. It was like a clock ticking down. Tick, tock, tick, tock, closer and closer to her big fall. Linda was getting bolder, but so was I. I wasn't just feeding my chickens anymore, I was keeping my eyes open. That night, after the car left, I stayed by the window for a long time. I thought about what I'd seen. A heavy bag. A sneaky guy. Linda acting like nothing was wrong during the day, but doing strange things at night. My chickens clucked in their sleep, soft little sounds from the coop. They didn't know what was going on, but I did. I wasn't sure what Linda was hiding yet, but I knew it was trouble. She thought she was winning. She thought she could push me around and make me leave. But she didn't see the storm coming her way. A big one. Every day she got louder, and every night I saw more. The cars, the bags, the whispers, it was all adding up. Linda wasn't just a mean neighbor. She was something else. And soon, her little game was going to fall apart. My chickens. They were just the start. They were like a sign, pointing me to the truth. Cluck, 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 counting down to the day everything would change. Stick around, because this is about to get wild. Then came the day that flipped everything upside down. It was a regular morning, and I was out in my yard, doing what I always did. I had a handful of chicken feed, little bits of corn and seeds, and I was tossing it to my hens. Clucky, Sunny, Pepper, Daisy, and Muffin ran around, pecking at the ground, happy as could be. The sun was shining, the air was warm, and everything felt normal. But then, out of nowhere, Linda burst out of her house like a tornado. She had her phone in her hand, holding it up high, and her face was redder than ever. "That's it," she screeched, her voice so loud it hurt my ears. "I'm calling 911 on those stupid chickens." She started pressing buttons on her phone, dialing fast, like it was the most important thing she'd ever done. I couldn't believe it. I laughed out loud. "Cops over chickens." Was she serious? "Linda," I said, still chuckling, "you're calling the police because of my hens." It sounded so silly. I thought she was just being her usual loud self, trying to scare me again. She didn't answer. She just kept yelling into her phone. "Yes, hello. I need help. My neighbor has these awful chickens, and they're ruining everything." I shook my head and tossed more feed to the girls. Let her call, I thought. What were the cops going to do? Arrest Clucky for clucking too loud? It was ridiculous. But before Linda could finish her big rant, something crazy happened. Sirens started wailing loud, screaming sounds coming closer and closer. I looked up, and so did she. 2 police cars zoomed down the street, their lights flashing red and blue. My heart jumped a little. Were they really here for my chickens? But then the cars screeched to a stop, not at my house, but at hers. Linda's jaw dropped. Her mouth fell open like she'd seen a ghost. The phone slipped a little in her hand as she stared. 4 police officers jumped out of the cars and ran up to her porch, their boots stomping hard. "Linda Grayson," one of them shouted, his voice big and serious. "You're under arrest." I froze, still holding the chicken feed. "Arrest? Linda? What was going on?" Linda's eyes got huge. "What?" she yelled. "This is a mistake. I'm the one calling you." But the officers didn't listen. They grabbed her arms, pulling her hands behind her back. I heard the click of handcuffs snapping shut. She twisted and shouted, "Let me go. It's his chickens you should be after." She pointed at me with her chin, but the cops didn't even look my way. They were focused on her. I stood there, watching, my chickens clucking around my feet. One of the officers started talking loud enough for me to hear. "We've been watching you, Linda," he said. "Those late-night visitors. We know all about them." My brain clicked. The cars. The bags. The sneaky stuff I'd seen. It all made sense now. The officer kept going. "You've been running a little side business, something illegal. Stacks of cash, shady deals. It's over." My mouth fell open too. Linda. Illegal stuff? All this time, she'd been yelling at me about my chickens, acting like she was perfect. But she was the one doing bad things. Those heavy bags I saw, the whispering at night, it wasn't just weird neighbor stuff. It was a crime. My chickens weren't the problem. She was. Linda's face went white, then red again. "No," she screamed as the cops pulled her toward the car. "You've got it wrong." But they didn't stop. They pushed her into the back seat, and she glared at me through the window. I just stood there, feed still in my hand, my hens pecking away like nothing was happening. The cops didn't care about my chickens. They were here for her. And just like that, everything changed. The cops took Linda away fast. Her hands were stuck behind her back with shiny silver handcuffs. Her face looked crazy, half shocked, half super mad. She didn't want to go, but the officers pushed her into the police car anyway. I could hear her yelling even as they shut the door. Neighbors started peeking out their windows, pulling curtains back just a little to watch. Some stepped onto their porches, whispering to each other. "What's happening?" they asked. "Why are the cops taking Linda?" The truth was coming out, and everyone wanted to know. I just stood there in my yard with my chickens. Clucky, Sunny, Pepper, Daisy, and Muffin were still pecking at the ground, not caring about the big scene. I watched as the police cars drove off, their lights flashing and sirens screaming. Linda was gone. All those months, week after week, she'd been coming over to yell at me. She'd pointed at my chickens, called them names, and acted like I was the worst neighbor ever. But now everyone could see, she was the real troublemaker, not me. It felt good to watch her get what she deserved. She'd been so mean, always trying to boss me around. "Get rid of those chickens," she'd say, over and over. But while she was busy harassing me, she was the one doing bad stuff. Those late-night cars, those heavy bags, it was all her secret. She thought she could hide it, but she couldn't. The cops knew, and now she was caught. A few days later, I got a letter in my mailbox. It was from the HOA board, the people who make the neighborhood rules. I opened it up, and guess what? They said sorry. The letter said, "Dear Jake, we're sorry about Linda's nonsense. Your chickens are fine. Thanks for being a good neighbor." I smiled big when I read that. Linda always said the HOA would kick me out, but they didn't. They were on my side. Things changed after that. People in Maple Grove stopped looking at me funny. Before, when Linda was around, some neighbors would glare at my yard or shake their heads. They'd heard her yelling and thought maybe she was right. But now, they knew the truth. When folks walked by my house, they didn't frown anymore. They smiled. Some even stopped to talk. "Hey, Jake," they'd say, "how are your hens doing? Got any eggs to share?" I'd laugh and tell them about Clucky and the gang. It felt nice to have happy neighbors again. Okay, everyone, that's the end of my crazy chicken story. Can you believe it? Karen thought she was the big boss of the neighborhood. She tried to boss me around and get rid of my chickens, but she didn't know the truth. She didn't see that I was ready for her. She thought she could push me down, but guess what? Sometimes, the person who looks small or quiet is the one with the real power. And in the end, Karen's own mean plan turned right back on her. How cool is that? Those chickens Daisy, Nugget, Pebbles, Sunny, and Clucky, they're little, right? They just cluck and peck at the ground. But they helped me win in a big way. They didn't fight or yell. They didn't have to. They just kept being themselves, and that was enough. It's funny how the smallest things can make a huge difference. Like, who would have thought a few hens could help catch a sneaky thief like Karen? It shows you don't have to be loud or scary to be strong. You just have to keep going, even when someone tries to stop you. I bet some of you have had a Karen in your life too. Maybe it's a kid at school who thinks they're better than everyone. Or maybe it's a grown-up